This is a country that lives inside stories. Stories of monsters in black locks, of Viking warriors who became fishermen, who became Scots, of a queen crowned at 9 months old, of soldiers who were murdered in the night by the very men sharing their fire, of a castle blown apart and rebuilt 200 years later, of a boy wizard born in a cafe on a rainy Edinburgh afternoon. Scotland is small, 5.5 million people on a landmass you can drive end to end in 5 hours. But it carries the weight of 10,000 years of human drama. This is the land of Macbeth and Braveheart, of Robert Burns and Robert the Bruce. The land that gave the world golf, the telephone, the television, penicillin, and the steam engine. Where roads tunnel through mountains and ferries thread between 1,000 islands. Where whiskey is not a drink, but a landscape in a glass, peat and rain and Atlantic wind distilled. Where the sky changes every hour and the light never quite does what you expect. 13 destinations, north to south. From the Viking-soaked islands above the Arctic Circle, south through the most dramatic landscapes in the British Isles. Through ancient battlefield and sacred island, through Granite City and Clifftop Fortress, to the river borders where Scotland ends and England begins. This is Scotland, where legends do not sleep. The journey begins at the most Norse place in Britain, islands that belong as much to Norway as to Scotland. Shetland is not quite Scotland, not quite anything else either. These 60 islands sit further north than Moscow. Closer to Bergen in Norway than to Edinburgh, closer to the Arctic Circle than to London. They were Norwegian for 800 years, handed to Scotland in 1468 as a dowry when a Danish king could not pay what he owed. The Norse word Norn was spoken here until the 18th century. The place names are still Norse. The soul of Shetland is still Viking. Lerwick is the most northerly town in Britain, a working harbour town of 7,000 people, fishing boats, ferry terminals, oil supply vessels. The main street runs along the water. The buildings are stone, built to withstand Atlantic winters that arrive early and leave late. There are no trees in Lerwick. There are no trees anywhere in Shetland. The wind sees to that. What Lerwick has instead is a quiet, self-sufficient toughness. A town that exists because people chose to stay, generation after generation, at the very edge of the world. The Shetland pony has lived on these islands for 4,000 years. They are the smallest of the native British breeds, bred small because the island's ponies had to survive on almost nothing, hardy enough to live on seaweed in winter. The otter lives on Shetland's shores, hunting in the Atlantic kelp. Puffins nest in their tens of thousands on the sea cliffs between April and August. In spring and summer, orca, killer whales, hunt grey seals in the sounds between the islands. Shetland has the wildest wildlife in Britain. It also has the highest happiness rating of any place in Scotland. The two are connected. From Shetland's Viking extremity, we travel south to the Scottish mainland, to Inverness, capital of the Highlands, where the Highlands concentrate, where history is not past but present in every street name, every battlefield, every stone. Inverness is the only city in the Scottish Highlands. Everything north and west of here is wilderness, mountains, lochs, single-track roads, red deer on the hillsides, golden eagles overhead. Inverness is where the Highlands concentrate. The railway arrives from the south. The ferries leave for the islands. The NC 500 road trip begins. This is the last city before the edge of things. The castle is Victorian, rebuilt in red sandstone in 1836. It sits on the cliff above the River Ness. From the battlements, the city spreads below, and the Highlands rise beyond in every direction. On the castle esplanade, a statue of Flora MacDonald, the woman who disguised Bonnie Prince Charlie as her Irish maidservant and smuggled him out of Scotland after the disaster of Culloden. The disguise worked. The prince escaped. Flora was arrested and imprisoned in the Tower of London. She was released a year later and emigrated to North Carolina. Scotland's heroes frequently ended up somewhere else. The River Ness runs through the heart of the city, flowing north from Loch Ness, grey-green and cold, into the Bowley Firth. It is a short river. Just 11 kilometers from loch to sea, but it carries the full weight of the Highlands with it, the peat, the cold, the silence of the mountains it drains. Locals walk the riverside paths in all weathers. The bridges are stone. The reflections are perfect on still mornings. Inverness is a city that lives beside its river the way all cities should, closely, gratefully, aware that the water was here long before the buildings and will be here long after. From Inverness, we drive just 5 miles south. The road follows the River Ness. The river widens, the water darkens, and then the loch opens, long and black and impossibly deep. Something may or may not be watching from beneath the surface. Loch Ness is 23 miles long, nearly a mile wide, and 230 meters deep, deeper than the North Sea. It contains more fresh water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined. The volume of water is so vast that if you emptied it and tried to refill it from England's rivers, it would take years. This is not a loch, it is an inland sea, dressed as a valley. Urquhart Castle stands on a promontory midway along the loch's western shore. Built in the 13th century, it was one of the largest castles in Scotland. It changed hands between Scots and English repeatedly during the Wars of Independence. Clan Grant held it for 200 years. In 1692, the same year as the Glencoe Massacre, government forces blew up the gatehouse to prevent Jacobites using it. The ruins remain. From the Grant Tower, the loch stretches in both directions. The view is unchanged from the view the castle's garrison would have had 700 years ago. The water is equally dark, the silence equally complete. The monster has lived here since 565 CE, when St. Columba reportedly ordered it back into the water from the River Ness. The modern story begins in 1933, when a local couple reported a creature reminiscent of a plesiosaur crossing the road ahead of them. The story ran in the Inverness Courier. The world's press arrived. The surgeon's photograph appeared in 1934, a distinctive head and neck rising from dark water. It was reproduced in newspapers worldwide. It was revealed in 1994 to be a toy submarine fitted with a sculpted head. The original sighting, the photograph, the sonar returns, the underwater footage that shows something are all impossible to explain entirely. The new Loch Ness Centre in Drumnadrochit presents the evidence fairly. The mystery, deliberately or not, remains unresolved. Twenty-first-century tourists still stand at the water's edge with cameras, just in case. From Loch Ness's dark mystery, we drive west through Glenshiel, where the mountains narrow the road to a single track. Then the glen opens. 3 sea lochs meet. A castle sits at their junction on a tiny island, reached by a stone bridge, surrounded by water on 3 sides. This is the image people picture when they think of Scotland. Eilean Donan is the image. It appears on calendars, shortbread tins, whiskey labels, and every Scotland tourism website ever made. It sits on a tiny island where 3 sea lochs meet: Loch Duich, Loch Long, and Loch Alsh. A stone bridge connects it to the road. The castle towers are reflected in the water on still days. The mountains rise behind. It looks exactly like what a Scottish castle is supposed to look like, because for most of the world, it became the template. The original castle was built in the 13th century. In 1719, during a Jacobite rising backed by Spanish troops, a government frigate sailed into Loch Duich and bombarded the castle for 3 days. Eilean Donan became a ruin. It remained a ruin for 200 years. Then, between 1912 and 1932, Lieutenant Colonel John McRae Gilstrap rebuilt it entirely from the foundations, using a plan from a dream, he claimed. The interior is fully furnished, every room fitted as if the McRaes had just stepped out. James Bond arrived here in The World Is Not Enough. Sean Connery, a Scotsman, came home to film at Eilean Donan in Entrapment and in Highlander, where he played an Egyptian immortal with a Scottish accent. Christopher Lambert played the Scotsman. The casting made no sense. The castle looks magnificent in every shot regardless. Scotland is not always logical. The landscapes compensate for almost everything. From Eilean Donan, we cross the Skye Bridge, the bridge they used to charge tolls for, until enough people refused to pay that they abolished the tolls in 2004. The island begins immediately. The landscape changes within minutes. And then, on the horizon, a pinnacle appears. Skye means Cloud Island. The name is Old Norse, Skye Aa, given by the Vikings who came here 1,000 years ago and found an island perpetually draped in weather. The description remains accurate. Skye gets more rainfall than almost anywhere in Britain. The clouds move fast. The light changes every 20 minutes. A hillside that was grey and featureless an hour ago suddenly glows gold when the sun breaks through. The island is 50 miles long and never more than 8 miles from the sea. It is the most dramatic landscape in Britain. The Old Man of Storr is a basalt pinnacle rising 48 meters from the Trottenish Ridge. It is 55 million years old, formed by ancient lava flows that subsequently collapsed in the world's largest known landslide. The collapse created the whole bizarre landscape of the northern Trottenish: pinnacles, cliffs, impossible shapes of dark rock. The Old Man himself was first climbed in 1955. Before that, for centuries, he simply stood there, being inexplicable. He means nothing and everything simultaneously. He is just rock, arranged by geology into something that looks like intention. The fairy pools sit in Glen Brittle, at the foot of the Black Quillen. The water comes off the mountains, filtered through basalt, and arrives in the pools a turquoise colour that belongs in the Caribbean rather than the Scottish Highlands. The water temperature does not belong in the Caribbean. It is approximately 8 degrees Celsius year-round. People swim in it nonetheless. The Kilt Rock is a sea cliff, where vertical basalt columns create a pattern genuinely resembling kilt pleats. Above the cliff, the Milt Falls drop 60 meters directly to the sea below. The effect from the viewing platform is vertiginous and extraordinary. Dunvegan Castle has been the home of Clan MacDonald since 1270, 750 years. The same family, the same building, the oldest continuously inhabited castle in Scotland. Inside, the fairy flag is displayed behind glass, a fragment of ancient silk, believed to have been made in Syria or Rhodes between the 4th and 7th centuries CE. How a piece of Middle Eastern silk arrived in a castle on Skye before the year 700 is not explained. The flag has been waved 3 times in battle. Twice, it reportedly produced miraculous victories. The third waving is being saved for when Scotland truly needs it. From Skye, we take the ferry from Oban south to Mull, then a smaller ferry to a tiny island, barely 3 miles long, that has been considered the most sacred place in Scotland for 1,500 years. Mull is the second largest of the Hebridean Islands. It has 30 miles of coastline for every 1 mile of interior road. The white-tailed eagle was reintroduced here in the 1970s after being hunted to extinction in Scotland. It is now thriving. The wingspan reaches 2.5 meters, the largest bird of prey in Britain, sometimes called the flying barn door for reasons that become obvious when you see one. Tobermory is the island's main town, a row of brightly painted houses above a natural harbour, familiar worldwide as the setting for the children's TV series Balamory. The real Tobermory is quieter than the television version. The real one has a distillery. Iona is 3 miles long, 170 permanent residents. No cars come here. You leave yours on Mull and walk off the ferry. In 563 CE, Saint Columba arrived from Ireland with 12 companions and founded a monastery on this tiny island. From Iona, Christianity spread across Scotland and then across northern England. The monastery became one of the most important centres of Christian learning in the early medieval world. The Book of Kells, the most beautifully illuminated manuscript ever made, was almost certainly begun here before being moved to Ireland for safety from Viking raids. "48 kings of Scotland are buried on Iona, among them Macbeth. The real Macbeth, not Shakespeare's version. The real Macbeth was King of Scots from 1040 to 1057 and was, by all contemporary accounts, a reasonably competent king who ruled for 17 years. Shakespeare's Macbeth murdered his king and went comprehensively mad. The real Macbeth was killed in battle by Malcolm, son of Duncan, and was brought to Iona for burial with full royal honours. History is more prosaic than literature. Literature is more interesting than history. Both are buried on Iona. From Iona's sacred quiet, we turn east and north, back to the Scottish mainland. We drive up the east coast to Aberdeen, a city built from silver granite that the North Sea made wealthy in a completely different way from anything the Scots had managed before. Aberdeen is built from silver granite. Every building in the city centre, the banks, the churches, the university, the shops, the houses, is constructed from the same local stone quarried from the Rubislaw quarry just west of the city. Rubislaw quarry was the largest man-made hole in Europe when it was worked, 142 meters deep, half a kilometer across. It quarried material for 200 years and then was closed in 1971. Aberdeen built itself from the inside of a single hole in the ground. Marischal College is the second largest granite building in the world. Its Gothic facade, spires, pinnacles, tracery, all carved from the same grey stone as everything around it. In sunlight, the granite sparkles. In rain and cloud, which is frequent, the whole city turns the color of the sea that surrounds it on three sides. Aberdeen was a fishing city. Then it became an oil city. In 1970, North Sea oil was discovered offshore, and Aberdeen transformed. The harbour that once landed herring began landing drilling equipment. The city became one of the wealthiest in Northern Europe in a decade. At the far end of Aberdeen Harbour, past the oil supply boats and the ferry terminal, is Footdee, known locally as Fitty. A tiny village of 19th-century fishermen's cottages arranged in enclosed squares, turned inward away from the sea, their occupants spent their lives on. No through road reaches it. Most people in Aberdeen have never walked through it. It has been here since 1809, mostly unchanged, tucked against the harbour wall with the North Sea on three sides. This is the Aberdeen the postcards miss. From Aberdeen, we drive 15 miles south along the Clifftop Coast Road to Dunnottar, where the cliffs become sea stacks, where one particular sea stack has a castle on it, where the crown jewels of Scotland were smuggled out of the door in a bag of laundry. Dunnottar Castle is the most dramatically sited ruin in Scotland and a strong contender for the most dramatically sited castle in Europe. A 50-metre sea stack of conglomerate rock surrounded by the North Sea on three sides, connected to the mainland by a narrow neck of cliff. The castle occupies the entire top of the stack. The walk to it descends steeply to the neck, then climbs again through a tunnel in the rock to the gatehouse. From the path above, looking back, the castle rises from the water like something that has grown from the sea rather than been built above it. In 1651, Oliver Cromwell's army was besieging Dunnottar. Inside were the Scottish crown jewels, the honours of Scotland, the oldest royal regalia in Britain. Cromwell wanted them. the minister of Kinef Church and his wife visited the castle. When they left, the crown, the scepter, and the sword of state had been smuggled out. The crown hidden under the woman's skirts, the scepter and sword concealed in a bundle of flax she was carrying for spinning. The castle held out for 8 more months, then fell. Cromwell's men searched everywhere. The regalia was gone. It was buried under the floor of Kinef Church, where it remained hidden for 11 years until the restoration of the monarchy in 1660. The nearest town is Stonehaven, a fishing town with a good harbour and an excellent claim to one of the stranger contributions to Scottish culinary history. The deep-fried Mars bar was invented here in 1992 at the Haven Fish Bar, a Mars chocolate bar, dipped in fish batter, deep-fried. The owner has said it was a joke that got out of hand. It is now listed in medical literature as a factor in Scotland's historically poor cardiovascular health statistics. It is also, despite everything, quite good. From Dunnottar's cliff edge drama, we drive south through Dundee and Perth, past the first Munros of the Central Highlands and into the valley of the Forth, where a castle sits on a volcanic plug. Glencoe announces itself. The road enters the glen between the Buachail Etive Moor, the great herdsman of Etive, and the first of the Three Sisters. The mountains rise on both sides. The sky narrows. The valley floor is flat and boggy and stretches ahead into mist. There is no gradual approach to Glencoe. You are outside it, and then you are inside it, and the change is immediate and total. The landscape is doing something to you before you can name what it is. The word for it is grandeur, but that is insufficient. Glencoe is not grand, it is elemental. The James Bond film Skyfall brought its climax to Glencoe. The moor, the ruined house, the final confrontation, all filmed here, in a landscape that needs no set dressing. The director Sam Mendes chose Scotland because he wanted somewhere that felt ancient and desolate simultaneously. Glencoe delivered both without effort. The same landscape contains a hidden valley, the Lost Valley, 45 minutes walk from the road. A flat-floored hanging corrie, invisible from the glen floor. The MacDonalds of Glencoe used it to hide their cattle when raiders came. On the 13th of February 1692, government soldiers, Many of them from Clan Campbell, who had been living as guests of the MacDonalds of Glencoe for 12 days, rose at 5 in the morning and began killing their hosts. "38 MacDonalds were murdered. More fled into the February blizzard and died of exposure on the mountains. The government's instructions specified that all MacDonalds under 70 were to be killed. The massacre has not been forgotten and has not been forgiven. The Clashegg Inn in Glencoe village still has a sign on the door that reads, "No Hawkers or Campbells." It was put there as a joke. It has been there for decades. Nobody takes it down. Some jokes are not entirely jokes. From Glencoe's raw history, we drive south through Rannoch Moor, the largest, loneliest moorland in Britain, and down to Stirling, the castle that held Scotland's fate for 300 years. Stirling Castle sits on a volcanic plug that rises 90 meters above the flat plain of the Forth Valley. Every army marching between the Highlands and the Lowlands had to pass through Stirling. The road north crossed the Forth here. The road south crossed here. The bridge was the only one for miles in either direction. Whoever held the castle held the crossing. Whoever held the crossing controlled Scotland. The castle changed hands between Scots and English at least 8 times during the Wars of Independence. It was called the Key of Scotland. The metaphor was not decorative, it was engineering. Mary, Queen of Scots, was crowned in the Chapel Royal at Stirling in September 1543. She was 9 months old. The crown was placed on her infant head in a ceremony lasting 2 hours, while the baby presumably objected in the manner of all 9-month-old Scots confronted with administrative procedure. Her father, James V, had died 6 days after her birth. Grief, they said, at the disaster of the Battle of Solway Moss. A baby queen. A country at war with England, a church at war with itself. Scotland's talent for producing dramatic historical situations was fully operational. Two miles from the castle, at Bannockburn, Robert the Bruce defeated an English army of 20,000 with a Scottish force of perhaps 7,000 on the 24th of June, 1314. The English cavalry charged and fell into the pits the Scots had dug on the marshy ground. The English king, Edward II, fled the field. Scotland had secured its independence. It would not remain secured. The Wars of Independence continued for decades more, but Bannockburn was the turning point that later generations chose to remember. The battlefield is now a car park and a visitor centre. The statue of Bruce on horseback stares south. He looks confident. He had reason to be. From Stirling, we drive 30 miles southeast on the motorway to Edinburgh, the capital, the city that contains, in 9 square miles of Old Town, more history than most countries manage in their entire territory. Edinburgh was built on volcanoes. The castle stands on the plug of an extinct volcano that erupted 340 million years ago. Arthur's Seat, the hill that rises inside the city boundaries, is the remains of another volcano 350 million years old. The city was built around and between these geological accidents. The old town grew along the ridge descending from the castle, the Royal Mile, a series of medieval streets piled on top of each other, the oldest layers now underground. The new town was planned in 1766, an extraordinary Georgian grid of identical stone terraces, one of the largest Georgian planned cities in Europe. Two cities separated by a valley that was once a loch, sharing a name. The honours of Scotland, the crown, the sceptre, and the sword of state, are displayed in the crown room of Edinburgh Castle. These are the objects that were hidden under a minister's wife's skirts at Dunnottar. They are the oldest royal regalia in the British Isles. The crown dates from 1540. At 1 o'clock every afternoon except Sundays, a cannon fires from the castle esplanade. The tradition began in 1861 as a time signal for ships in the Firth of Forth. The ships are mostly gone, the cannon fires regardless. Beneath the Royal Mile, a medieval street was sealed in the 17th century when new buildings were constructed on top of it. Mary King's Close remained underground, intact, for 300 years. The plague sealed some of these rooms. J.K. Rowling wrote the early Harry Potter books in Edinburgh, a single mother living on benefits, writing in cafes to stay warm. The castle visible from the Elephant House cafe windows became Hogwarts. Victoria Street, one of the most photographed streets in the Old Town, became Diagon Alley. Rowling wrote the final chapter of the Deathly Hallows in the Balmoral Hotel. She left a message on the bust of Hermes in her suite. It reads, J.K. Rowling finished writing Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. In this room, on the 11th of January 2007. The bust has been kept exactly as she left it. From Edinburgh's layered centuries, we travel 45 minutes west on the M8 motorway. The tenements get larger, more densely packed. The river appears. This is the Clyde. And this is Glasgow, different from Edinburgh in almost every way that matters. Glasgow is the largest city in Scotland. It is the city that built ships, the Queen Mary, the QE2, the warships that fought at Jutland from its Clyde shipyards. It is the city that was the second city of the British Empire for a century and a half, and has spent the subsequent century dealing with what happens after empire ends and the industry moves elsewhere. Glasgow's response has been art, music, architecture, food, and a form of civic pride so intense it occasionally tips into comedy. Glasgow is not Edinburgh. Glasgow will tell you this at length, with enthusiasm and with considerable justification. The Kelvingrove Art Gallery is the most visited museum in Scotland. It is free. The building is red sandstone Baroque, built for the 1901 International Exhibition. Inside, the collection ranges from a medieval armor suit to a Salvador Dali. A Second World War Spitfire hangs from the ceiling, a gift from a local fighter pilot's estate. Daily organ concerts fill the main hall with music at lunchtime. School children from Govan come here on the same days as tourists from Japan. This is what a genuinely public museum looks like. Charles Rennie Mackintosh designed the Glasgow School of Art in 1896. It is one of the finest Art Nouveau buildings in the world. It burned twice, in 2014 and again in 2018. The second fire so severe that restoration has been a decade-long project. Glasgow also gave the world Primal Scream, Franz Ferdinand, Simple Minds, a disproportionate contribution to 20th century music from one post-industrial city. The UNESCO City of Music designation was not awarded by accident. Celtic and Rangers play each other in the Old Firm Derby, described variously as the most passionate and the most toxic football rivalry in the world. Both descriptions are accurate. The match is watched in 180 countries. The city recovers for several days afterward. From Glasgow's energy and noise, we drive south through the central belt, and into quieter country. The hills soften, the rivers slow, the border country, where Scotland and England have been arguing across the River Tweed for 1,000 years. The Scottish borders are the quiet end of Scotland. The drama of the Highlands is 200 miles north. Down here, the hills are green rather than purple and brown. The rivers run clear through farmland rather than peat bog, and the towns, Melrose, Jedburgh, Kelso, Dryburgh, have market squares and high streets rather than clan histories and massacre memorials. But the borders are not unbloodied. This was the most fought-over ground in Scotland for 500 years. Every English invasion came through here. Every Scottish counterattack descended through here. The ruins in every town are ruins because armies kept burning them. Melrose Abbey was founded in 1136 by King David I. It was burned by Edward II's forces in 1322, rebuilt. Burned again by Richard II in 1385, rebuilt again, damaged by the Earl of Hertford in 1544. The pattern of Scottish border history is build, burn, rebuild, burn, rebuild. The Abbey's ruins are the most beautiful in Scotland. The Gothic stonework carved into tracery that survived partial burning and 7 centuries of weather. In the Abbey grounds, a lead casket was found in 1921 and again in 1998. The casket contains a human heart. The heart of Robert the Bruce is buried at Melrose Abbey. Robert the Bruce died in 1329. On his deathbed, he asked that his heart be taken on crusade to Jerusalem, the journey he had never made in the wars that had consumed his entire adult life. His friend, Sir James Douglas, Black Douglas, the most feared Scottish warrior of his generation, carried the embalmed heart in a silver casket. He got as far as southern Spain, where he died fighting the Moors at the Battle of Teba in 1330, having thrown the casket toward the enemy and charged after it. The casket was recovered. The heart was brought home. It was buried at Melrose. The Bruce's body is at Dunfermline Abbey. His heart is in the borders. The two parts of him were separated by the same commitment to Scotland that animated his entire reign. We began in the Viking North, on islands that Norway gave away as a debt payment 500 years ago and have not entirely let go of since. We crossed a strait where two seas collide. We stood at the edge of a loch that contains more fresh water than England and watched the surface for something that may or may not exist. We crossed a bridge to an island the Vikings named Cloud. We visited the island where Scotland's Christianity began, and its kings are buried. We stood on a sea stack where a woman hid a country's crown jewels in her skirts. We walked into a valley where an act of hospitality became an act of murder that is still not forgiven 300 years later. We saw the castle that was the key of a country. We walked the streets under which other streets lie buried. We visited the city that built the ships the world sailed on, and we stood at the grave of a king's heart, separated from the rest of him by 500 miles and 7 centuries. Scotland is 5.5 million people on a landmass you can drive end to end in a working day. It punches so far above its weight in science, in literature, in music, in whiskey, in philosophy, in sheer density of dramatic history per square mile, that the phrase seems inadequate. It invented the telephone and the television. It produced Adam Smith and David Hume and James Clerk Maxwell. It distills the best spirits on earth from rain, peat, and copper. It is, for its size, one of the most extraordinary places on the planet. Visit Scotland before you have run out of reasons. The castle that holds the oldest crown jewels in Britain. The loch that holds its secret, the island that holds its saints and its kings. The glen that holds its grief, the city that holds its stories 6 layers deep underground. The borders that hold its most romantic heart, literally. Scotland is not a destination. It is an argument the landscape is making about what matters. Go and listen. The country will not wait forever. The mist comes in fast. The light is extraordinary when it breaks. And the legends, when you stand in the right place at the right time, are not legends at all. They are still happening.